We all know how difficult it can feel when, after doing something or saying something we later regret, the very same mind that urged us into that action turns back around and asks, "Why did you do that? Why did you say that? You shouldn't have done that." And so, we carry the weight of regret. We spend so much of our lives replaying the past, dwelling on the things we wish we could undo, or fearing what lies ahead. In fact, studies suggest that nearly 75% of people spend a significant part of their lives either regretting the past or worrying about the future. So if you've been feeling this way, if your heart feels heavy with regret, you're not alone. We all walk this path at one point or another. The Buddha, with deep compassion, recognized that regret is one of the great obstacles to inner peace. That's why he gave us a very direct teaching, a practical and liberating path to free ourselves from the suffering of remorse. So how do we live in such a way that we are not constantly looking back in sorrow? The Buddha's first teaching is simple. Be mindful of your actions. He says, before you act, pause, reflect. Ask yourself, will this action lead to suffering, for me or for others? If the answer is yes, then refrain. That is the first step. But how do we bring this into our daily lives? To guide us, the Buddha gave a beautiful teaching to his own son, Rahula. Before becoming the Buddha, he was a prince, and Rahula was his child. Later in life, Rahula became a monk, and one day, the Buddha asked him, "Rahula, what is the purpose of a mirror?" Rahula replied, "To see one's reflection, Venerable Sir." And the Buddha said, "In the same way, Rahula, before you act, before you speak, you must use your mind like a mirror. Reflect carefully on what you are about to do. Ask yourself, will this bring harm to me? Will this bring harm to others? Am I acting with a mind that is wholesome or unwholesome? If the action arises from an unwholesome state of mind, then do not follow it. Because as the Buddha taught, when someone acts with an impure heart, suffering follows, as surely as a cartwheel follows the ox that pulls it. But if, after reflection, you see that your actions will bring peace and happiness to yourself and to others, and that your mind is rooted in kindness, clarity, and care, then by all means, go forward. That is the path that leads to joy. This is where the practice of mindfulness becomes essential. To live mindfully does not mean we do things in a robotic way. It means we become deeply aware of why we are doing what we do. Most of the time, we act without clarity, and that's when we stumble into regret. So the very first step is to pause and ask, what is the intention behind this? What is the purpose of this action? When we become mindful of the consequences, when we reflect before we speak, before we act, we begin to choose wisely. We begin to live in a way that does not plant the seeds of regret. But the Buddha also understood something very human, that not all of us are able to reflect in every moment. We are not fully awakened beings. We forget. We make mistakes. So what then? The Buddha gave a second teaching. When you make a mistake, do not hide it. If there is something you regret, something you said or did in the past, do not bury it in silence. The Buddha advised us to speak it. Confess it to someone who can understand you. Speak to a spiritual friend, a teacher, or a wise companion who will not judge, but who can offer guidance. Open your heart. There are two powerful things that happen when we reveal our regrets to someone wise. First, it lightens our heart. The burden of guilt, the tension that builds up from hiding, this begins to dissolve. And as it softens, we become less likely to repeat the same mistake again. The more we conceal our missteps, the more likely they are to repeat. But when we open up, we create the space for healing and transformation. Second, we receive support. A spiritual community can offer clarity, kindness, and strength when we feel most lost. That's why Sangha, the community, is one of the 3 jewels in the Buddha's path. So, these are the 2 ways the Buddha taught us to work with regret. 1. Live mindfully. Reflect before you act. Choose only those actions that lead to peace, not pain. 2. When you do make a mistake, be honest. Speak your truth. Let it out. Let it be seen in the light of wisdom and compassion. The Buddha said, recognizing a mistake as a mistake and committing not to repeat it, that is what sets the heart free. So today, I invite you to begin this practice. Gently reflect on your actions, cultivate mindfulness, and when needed, be brave enough to open your heart. May this practice bring you peace. May it bring you clarity. And may it bring you closer to freedom. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, Namo Buddhaya.